You know, a savvy fantasy baseball owner is always looking at new stats to fashion the best team possible. And that means that we have to look at the trends of the draft as you're getting ready for yours. So let's turn to the co-host of the Fantasy BFFs and writer for Roto Experts. Frank Stampfl joins us once again. Good to have you back in studio, man.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Well, it's baseball season once again, and I know that you've probably taken part in hundreds of mock drafts. So we're going to be tapping into your knowledge here a little bit and trying to figure out exactly what you've learned, because what's in the books and what is actually happening in the drafts can sometimes be two completely different things. And I always feel like the most difficult position to address is always pitching. It's because the starting pitchers are throwing fewer innings. Relief pitchers are gaining momentum. So what kind of a plan do you have to have when you're addressing both ends of the pitching rotations?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Steve, and it's something you have to be conscious of before you enter your draft. I mean, you're going to know what your draft slot is, but you have to know throughout the draft, where am I going to attack starting pitching? Where am I going to get my closers? Where am I going to get my saves from? Because a lot of teams are going, closer by committee now. They're going with matchups. They're using these Josh Hader type relievers as well. So it's becoming harder to find the saves category specifically and some of those closers in baseball. So I think you just have to have a conscious plan coming in. For me personally, when it comes to starting pitching, I'm trying to get 2 of my top 15 ranked starting pitchers. I'm trying to get 400 strikeouts out of my top 2 pitchers. I want guys that are going to keep the ERA and the WHIP categories down. Obviously, you're trying to find that. So I'm probably looking at 2 of my first 4 or 5 round picks I'm using on starting pitching, and then somewhere a few rounds later, I'm getting a closer. I'm getting one of these Brad Hand types, Roberto Osuna. I'm not going to pay all the way up for like an Edwin Diaz or maybe even a Aroldis Chapman, because I think the price tag's a little bit too high for those guys. But you want to try and get at least one closer who is going to have his job from the beginning of the season. And I'm looking in that 7th, 8th round range for sure to get my first closer.
We used to always target middle infielders that had some pop too, because that used to always be a rarity. Now everywhere you turn, you've got shortstops that are leading the league in home runs, second basemen that are cranking out 30 home runs. So if that's the case, the productivity of, say, the 10th best second baseman or shortstop is going to be almost as good as some of the top ones. Does it feel like those middle infield positions are something maybe you can wait on a little?
I do feel like that. If we're just talking about position scarcity as well, I feel like outfield dries up really quickly. And a lot of these rotisserie drafts where you have to start, say, 5 outfielders, you got to grab your outfielders early on. So you mentioned it with the middle infielders. I mean, some of these middle round guys, Gleyber Torres, Rougned Odor, they're still going to hit for some pop. I mean, even later on, it seems like there's this glut of middle infielders, Jorge Polanco, Joey Wendell, even Wilmer Flores now with the Arizona Diamondbacks, where, these guys are going to help you, and you're getting them much later in the draft. Whereas at that point, if you're taking your 4th or 5th outfielders, it's not going to be very pretty.
Well, don't tell me about Wilmer Flores. Wilmer Flores, that guy can really pop if he has enough at-bats to actually go and do it. And in Arizona, he might get 500 at-bats. He wasn't getting 500 ABs here with the Mets, but finding productivity and gems in the middle of the draft is really how you have to win. I'd like some names, if you could, please. Some mid-tier pitchers you expect to take that step forward and maybe start to become top-tier pitchers this year.
Yeah, I think there's a group of about 5 or 6 guys that really the fantasy industry is touting this year. And, they're going outside the top 30 starting pitchers. It's kind of a similar range where guys like Blake Snell and Patrick Corbin and Jamison Tyone were going last year. All those guys made the jump. Now they're going inside the top 20 starting pitchers. You have to use a 3rd, 4th round draft pick on some of these guys.
Right.
Some of the names that I'm looking at who I think can make that jump, I'm looking at Shane Bieber with the Cleveland Indians, just an organization who churns out starting pitchers left and right. We know the Corey Klubers, the Mike Clevingers now as well. He's a command control artist. He's going to get some strikeouts as well. I'm looking at 2 Red Sox pitchers. I know it's tough to say with the Boston Red Sox here, but Nathan Eovaldi, I know the New York market, the Yankee fans have been, they've seen Eovaldi up close. He's starting to turn more into a pitcher rather than just a thrower. We know that he's always thrown hard, but now he's developing a cutter. Same thing goes with his teammate, Eduardo Rodriguez, who a lot of people are expecting, if he can stay healthy, he's going to be able to take that next step. He can give you a strikeout per inning and a sub 3.7, 3.6 ERA. So those are a few guys. Joe Musgrove as well out there in Pittsburgh. The reason why some of these guys are going a little bit later on in the middle rounds of drafts is that they haven't shown you the workload yet. So that's why you're getting them at a bit of a discount than some of these other starting pitchers.
You started things off with Cleveland. Don't forget, the guy that basically turned things around in Cleveland is now skipper with the Mets. And you saw what he did with Zach Wheeler. He could possibly do the same thing with Steven Matz. So maybe keeping an eye on some of those lower tier Mets pitchers might be beneficial as well. Outfield has always been kind of the most flexible position. You can get power out of the outfield, or maybe you can get speed or batting average. But is it also one of those, do you see any of those mid-round guys primed to take that step forward in that position as well?
Yeah, definitely. Tommy Pham is just a guy that I'm all over this year. I'm actually very bullish on the Tampa Bay Rays lineup. I think they're a little bit, underrated heading into the season. He actually scored 100 runs last year between his time with the Cardinals and the Tampa Bay Rays. I think he's a player that can, if everything goes right, can give you 25 home runs, 25 stolen bases. He's going in that 4th, 5th round range right now. So Tommy Pham, Yasiel Puig, another one. We've heard the name for years. We know the talent is there. Now he goes.
And we've all been burned. He's almost like the new Eric Hosmer. Yeah. But if you have Puig on your team, you expect the most, but you usually don't get it.
Yeah, entering a contract year, finally playing in a hitter's ballpark with Cincinnati. It's a great lineup. A lot of people think he has the potential to hit 30 home runs, steal 15 bases.
All right.
He's going in the 5th, 6th rounds. I know you might have been burned by him before, Steve, but you got to go back to the well here. I'm telling you, in Cincinnati, we could get a big year out of Yasiel
Hosmer and Puig on my team again this year. All right, catching position. This is always a little bit of a conundrum here because the top two guys, Realmuto and Sanchez, are going ADP between 55 and 60. The thing is, the other guys that are available at that position, at that spot, are so valuable. Is it more valuable to get a catcher when you know that there's going to be a major drop-off, or do you have to go with someone else in that 55 to 60 range?
Me personally, I can't use a pick that early in my drafts on a guy like Realmuto and Sanchez. I think they're extremely talented players, but look, the catcher position is one that's going to take a beating. I mean,
so you're punting basically on catcher.
I'm gonna wait a little bit. I'll get some of those mid-round guys later on, maybe around 8 through 10. I'm looking at Yasmani Grandal now with the Milwaukee Brewers, a great hitter's ballpark as well, a great lineup. I want a lot of exposure to the Milwaukee Brewers this year, and then Wilson Ramos, who came over to the New York Mets.
Sure.
You're looking for batting average,
right?
And you want a startable catcher. Wilson Ramos is going to give you both of those things. So I like those guys in the round 8 to 10 range. Just me personally, Realmuto and Sanchez going in the 4th, 5th round, it's just too rich of a price tag for me.
All right, finally, I want to talk a little bit about ADP because we look at where a guy should be drafted, and then there comes a point in the draft where we throw ADP out the window and we just tell ourselves that I want Michael Conforto on this team one way or another. I want Brandon Nimmo on this squad. At some point in any draft, do you throw the ADP statistics away and just draft the guys you like?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go as far as to say, I'm not going to use ADP at the start of the draft. You got to get your guys. You got to get the players that you want. Yeah, we use it as a guide. We want to see where some players are going, where we can identify the best values. But when it comes down to it, I mean, we want to have fun. We want to enjoy the game, too. You want to get the guys that you really like. So, you use it as a guide. You don't want to technically be a slave to ADP,
right,
but you definitely want to try and use it to your advantage. But in those middle rounds, don't hesitate to pull some guys up the board. If you have a feeling about a guy who's going to break out this year, Michael Conforto, another very popular pick in those middle rounds for outfield that people like to break out this year. At some point, you just take your guys, Steve.
Hey, man, you've got to be happy with your team.
Absolutely.
Well, we're always happy with your insights, so thank you so much. And you can get all of his info on Roto Experts, the co-host of Fantasy BFFs, Frank Stampfl. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
All right, stick around. We're back after this.